Everybody, welcome to Brilliant But Lazy. I'm Alan.
I'm Josh. What's up, man?
Not much. It feels like it's been a while since we've done one of these, but we just did one. Well, we just had an episode go out today, so
Yeah, may the fourth be with you.
may the 4th be with you as well. And in true Star Wars fan fashion, I celebrated by watching a Marvel movie. Uh,
But it was
so
space
it was
related.
space.
Uh, there's that.
Yes. So today we're going to be talking about the newly released Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, starring Chris Pratt, Zoe Saldana, Dave Bautista, Karen Gillian, and Rocket Raccoon.
hmm
So this is going to be spoiler free for a good chunk of it, and then when we get into spoilers, we will let you know. So if you have not seen the movie yet, we're going to start off with our spoiler free thoughts on the movie. And Josh, do you want to start us off with that? Like, what did you think of Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3?
Yeah, it just wasn't my cup of tea. It was boring at several times. There was not a lot of action. There was a lot of like forced emotions, but I didn't feel anything. Um, it was just really bland to me. Um, it wasn't. It was a great movie. I really did like it. There was a lot of action. There was a lot more violence in this movie than in Marvel movies for a while, which I was kind of surprised with. It definitely had James Gunn's flair, to the point where I was like, oh yeah, it's just it's a James Gunn Jackson Pollock painting just all
Oh yeah,
over the screen. Uh, and it we don't have a lot of solid trilogies in the Marvel MCU, and I feel like this made for a solid Guardians of the Galaxy trilogy. It really did feel like a worthy entry both to the Guardians films and to the Marvel films, and you know. James Gunn now stepping out and going over to Warner Brothers. This definitely felt like a worthy last film of his, at least for a while. So
yeah,
it was a solid film. I really did like it. I even kind of got teary eyed at some points and thought that it was really well made. So yeah, I enjoyed it.
yeah. Okay. So the first part of that was just to mess with me, right?
Just bull.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. You had me going for a second. It's like, oh, he's going to think it's lazy. I think it's brilliant. Um, I really, I think this might be right up there with the first Guardians of the Galaxy for me. Not only is it everything that you just said, but it also it's a beautiful film. Like the space scapes that we see in this, and it's so well shot. It's just a beautiful film to look at. Like there was never a moment on the screen where I was like, I don't want to look at this. Like everything is so well composed, and it just looks fantastic. Um,
hmm
and I agree completely that this makes the Guardians of the Galaxy one of the strongest trilogies in the MCU, because whereas a lot of the other films rely on you have to see these other films for this story to make sense, this one you could watch volumes Guardians 1, 2, and 3 back to back, and you would still get the same story. Like you
Yeah.
don't you Infinity War is there, but you don't need to see Infinity War.
Yeah. Yeah. James Gunn is very competent in making standalone films. I don't feel so standalone that they are they're odd entries into the MCU, like say Eternals or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
They definitely fit well together. I did see some people saying, "Man, if you haven't seen the holiday special, you're gonna be lost." I didn't really think so. I think there's maybe one line that actually refers to something that was revealed in the holiday special. Other than that, I didn't really feel like it was reliant on you seeing that little bit.
Yeah, I mean the holiday special is fun, but you don't need to see that to see this. I think that's the first Disney Plus project that isn't necessary viewing for the next chapter with those characters.
Mm,
I feel like Falcon and the Winter Soldier is going to be required viewing for Captain America 4,
for
but
sure.
and
Yeah.
Ms. Marvel is almost necessary for the Marvels, but this is you don't need to see the holiday special. I mean, I recommend the holiday special. I love the holiday special. But I think this is a you don't need to see it for that.
I agree. I think it was good. I think it had a competent villain. Um, had great action. It had it was very well done character development with pretty much all of the characters. I mean, I was just telling Seth the other day that the reason why Picard season 3 was so good is because each character got time to shine and were really well presented. And I think that the same thing is true in this case. That each one of the Guardians of the Galaxy, both the ones from the first movie, plus the ones that have kind of been added on over
Hmm.
time, plus a couple new ones. They all had really good time in this, and they all had personal investments in the story, and so I appreciated that. I also appreciated this isn't a spoiler, but James Gunn recently did an interview that said he didn't really care for Peter Quill's Star Lord in Infinity War and how he was written. And they really did dumb him down for that, or he was the comedy relief for that. And Um, he didn't feel that way in this movie. He felt competent. He felt like he was the leader of this crew.
Hmm.
When he was focused on a goal, he felt competent. This wasn't a turnaround where all of a sudden he's just perfect and he's unstoppable. But he did feel like a genuine person that's grown over these films, and I
Yeah.
appreciated the writing around him in this movie.
And they even opened it up with him still kind of dealing with the consequences of Infinity War and Endgame.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so, um, before we get into spoilers, one of the biggest things about the Guardians of the Galaxy movies is the soundtrack. What did you think of the soundtrack?
My gosh, I mean, it's been a minute since I've seen the other ones, but this was just banger after banger. I'm sure it's similar to the other ones, but I wouldn't be surprised if this was like double the song capacity of the previous entries, because it really was like they were just but it felt right in this scenario. I mean, Gunn is known for inserting pop songs into everything he does. He's known for that soundtrack being a part of his storytelling. But it's always been a part of Peter Quill, and it didn't feel out of place. It felt right every time. Um, there was definitely a song by a certain band that a different song by that band played in a Star Trek movie, and I was like, I'm just not feeling it. But in this movie, I was like, yes, let's do it. Perfect song. Let's get it going.
Yeah.
And yeah, I enjoyed the soundtrack. I was grooving with it throughout the whole film.
Yeah, this one breaks the mold a little bit and goes outside of the 70s because he has a Zune now that has playlists by decade.
Correct.
So you
Correct.
get a little bit
Yes.
more modern stuff in there. Um, Anything else spoiler free that we can talk about before we dive into spoilers?
Um, um, it was like I said, it was there's a lot of action. I think if not for who was getting killed in the action, it couldn't have been PG-13. I thought there was, and I was here for it. I was like,
Hmm.
this is great. This is well done. And we've seen James Gunn behind an R-rated production, in an R-rated superhero production. This didn't need to be R-rated, but it was like he definitely filled the space of what the potential of a PG-13 film could be. So I was here for it, and I really appreciated it. And honestly, I did not expect to like the film as much as I did. So
Okay.
I came out of it having a really I didn't think the trailers for this film looked that appealing. I'm not saying they were terrible. I
Yeah.
just was like I don't know how I'm feeling about this. So I went in with a very open mind and came out very satisfied.
I try to avoid the trailers as much as possible, and we'll talk about the film's marketing here in a second. But yeah, I had the expectations I had for this film were as much. I love the first one so much, and I appreciate the second one. I love these characters, and I love this film. It was
Mm-hmm.
what I wanted it to be. It's not what I expected it to be, but it's what I wanted it to be, and I think it's brilliant. Where do you fall? Brilliant or lazy?
Definitely brilliant.
All
Yeah.
right.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, with that, we are going to get into spoilers for Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. So if you have not seen the film yet, head out to the cinema, go see it, support your local theater. And with that, we're getting into spoilers. All right. So the marketing for this film, from what I've seen in interviews and headlines about this being the last of these characters, I feel like it was a big mislead.
Really?
Yeah. I feel like I know there are some characters here who aren't going to come back. Like I don't think Dave Bautista is ever going to work with Disney again. But they set it up, and it's all more credit to them because you go into a superhero movie, you're not going to expect the main characters to die, but they were setting it up to make you think everyone's going to die.
I was certain at least one of them would.
Yeah, and then we're in the spoilers, so you've had your warning. No one dies, and I was like, okay, like you got me there, James Gunn. Like, good one.
I saw the first trailer and I haven't seen anything past the first trailer. And I don't think that first trailer was heavy on the this is the end for these characters. But if that was the tone of the marketing, I wouldn't necessarily call it a mislead because I do feel like by the end of the film, the team has split up. We're into the the version in the comics where Rocket is the leader of the new team. Everybody else has kind of gone their separate ways, and they're not dead. They're not dead and gone like Iron Man or something like that. But with James Gunn out of the picture, at least for now, and just the where the MCU is going, I wouldn't be surprised if we don't see them for a very, very long time. And I wouldn't be surprised if they don't currently have an idea of when this team will come back. I mean, they left the door open, but it definitely seemed like a send off.
Yeah, it definitely is a send off, and I appreciate the way they handled it. I'll just jump right to the end. I was not expecting the legendary Star Lord will return. Like I thought Chris Pratt was done.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting that either.
I guess Secret Wars you're gonna bring him in.
Who knows? And that could just be a placeholder. They again, I wouldn't be surprised if they didn't have a secure like this is the next Guardian story
Yeah.
in mind right now, especially with the main creative behind him, not at the same company anymore.
Or they're saving Star Lord for when they actually can do Kitty Pryde and do their dynamic because I know they're a couple in the comics.
Oh,
Now
really? I didn't know that.
Yeah. So. So that's my big takeaway from this. Spoiler wise.
I love the first Guardians film. It was such a roll of the dice for Marvel at the time, and James Gunn certainly he's held back less over the later films, but there was still a lot in that film that in a different time people have been like, this is too much, this isn't grounded, and just not accepted it. So it was a risk back then that paid off really well. As much as I like Kurt Russell, I just the second film doesn't have the rewatchability of the first film.
Right.
I know what happens, I remember what happens, but it's not very memorable to me, and it's not something that I like want to go back and rewatch. I think I've seen the first Guardians at least double or triple the amount of times that I've seen the second one.
Guardians 2 has a lot of fun meme moments. Like, I'm Mary
Hmm.
Poppins, y'all. Like, and that's about it. Like, it has those fun moments. You have Baby Groot dancing at the beginning, and
Hmm.
there's not much weight to that story. Whereas there's a lot of
Hmm.
weight in the first
There
one
it is.
with him dealing with his mother's death, and then there's a lot
Hmm.
of weight in this one dealing with Rocket's origin story. And I think they handled that story very well. I was curious how they would handle that, and I think they made great use of flashbacks here.
Yeah, this one had a lot more weight, a lot more substance to it. It had a lot more drive to the just the story. There was the characters were moving in a certain direction for the whole film, and I appreciated that. Um, First, I was like, man, is Rocket gonna be out of this film? I mean, yeah, we're getting the his his history, the flashbacks, but I want now Rocket to have some time to shine, and he did, thankfully. But I think that was something we had guessed from the trailers, is that this was going to involve Rocket's history, and it's going to be pretty hard, and it
Yeah,
was. It was definitely well done, and I appreciated that. I think that was the big sell for this movie that they
yeah.
pulled that off.
I think the most powerful moment for everything with Rocket for me was when everyone is watching what they did to him to make
Hmm.
him Rocket. And Nebula says, "This is worse than what Thanos did to me." Because you get to see a bit of what Thanos did to her
Yeah.
in Infinity War, and like you get hints of it throughout the films. But for her to say that really puts it to the extreme and lets you know like how bad the stuff is that they're not showing you.
Yeah, and I appreciated that. It was definitely James Gunn esque because you had these other creatures that look, he had like a spider bunny and a walrus on wheels and stuff like that. And I feel like, you know, I was like, wow, they're really, they're not holding back. And then you get even more later. They don't hold back on the creature feature stuff of this, and
No.
but James Gunn has earned it, and it looked really good. We've talked about this. I've talked about this with other people. It's definitely been in the news. The issue with Marvel and the special effects crews and people always being on crunch time, and it still doesn't pay off, and seeing glaring things in Thor Ragnarok or Doctor Strange into the multiverse of madness. I mean, there's some things in this film, but in terms of the creature features and the action and everything, I think visually this film really is impressive. I think the stuff that I was noticing was probably more to do with the shitty projector that I happened to be in the room
Mm.
with, and not necessarily the film, because it looked really well, and there's a lot of animal stuff and creature stuff, and that demands quality special effects, and I thought it looked really. The CGI was on point, at least from
Yeah,
what I saw.
and even the practical effects, because there's a lot of practical stuff on Counter Earth with all of the
Hmm.
humanoid creatures.
Yeah.
I think that all looked fantastic as well. The only CG that really took me out of it, and I think it was just the character design for most of the film was Groot. Like I still don't like this design of Groot. It's too bulky for me. It's awkward. His head seems like
Yeah.
he's a Funko Pop. Like it's
Like he didn't look as plastic and toy like as he did in the holiday special, but yeah, it's definitely more bulky and panely and action figurey than
yeah,
his organics. Just at the end of the film, they show a lot of images from throughout the franchise, and every time they showed the skinny, more organic tree-like version of him from the first film, it was like, oh yeah, I kind of miss that Groot.
yeah.
Uh,
I
he
mean,
does look different, but
yeah,
it's not terrible.
it's not, and it serves a purpose that you learn at the end when he opens up and has all of the weapons. Uh,
Hmm.
so, um, how did you feel about the film's handling of the Gamora situation?
I liked it a lot. I was wondering the direction that they would take. Would this be a, romance part two? Would this, I just And at the beginning, I wasn't sure that I was gonna like her. Like they were, it was so hard in the opposite direction of the Gamora we knew. Um, but the more she was on screen, the more I appreciated her. Like sometimes she was just a straight up dick,
Yeah.
but other times she was throwing Peter Quill into a wall and saying, why do I have to be, the representation of the void that you're missing? You
Hmm.
should, these are your problems, not me, not mine, and stop trying to project them and get me to fill that hole. And I thought that was good writing. I thought that was what's a character in her position would feel like. And I'm glad that it wasn't some at the by the end of the film. Oh, I remember every time type moment, because it just wouldn't work for this situation.
Yeah.
She's a different person, and I appreciated the route that they took with her.
And I feel I do too, and I like that they made their relationship platonic by the end. Like
Mm-hmm.
he kind of gets it now, and she gets where he was coming from. So they have a little bit of respect for each other, and
Mm-hmm.
they go their separate ways. Like I don't see them getting back together in the future. That's why I think they're saving Star Lord for Kitty Pryde.
Yeah, I almost there was a point in the film that I seriously thought they were going for a Star Lord Nebula relationship. I know that one of the jokes is in the trailer, where he's like
Yeah,
looking at her and everything, and that was made up for jokes. That's not the only time in the movie that they kind of hint towards something, even from her side, towards something that she might be feeling. And thankfully, it didn't go hard in that, and I just didn't think it needed it. Like Peter Quill doesn't need to have a romantic partner by the end of this film for it to feel complete.
yeah,
And we don't need Gamora to be back to who she was for it to feel complete. It there's a lot of somber stuff in this film, and unhappiness in this film that's just life. And I thought that not being wrapped up in a pretty bow was like part of that, and I liked it. I just thought that was handled really well.
yeah. Me as well. Um,
What do you think of the villain?
I'm trying to remember his name. The
The high evolutionary.
high evolutionary. I thought he was great. I thought he was a good villain. He was very menacing. Uh, they they use him more in flashbacks than in modern day, and I
Hmm.
think that makes it more effective because you see how twisted he is towards Rocket and the other creatures and that those cages. Um, and I thought I the one thing that bugged me is every time they showed his face, all I could think of was Star Trek Insurrection.
Yes. Oh my gosh, me too.
Uh,
Oh, pulling it back, and yes,
yeah,
and I literally watched a scene from that. Right, it randomly came up on YouTube stories, and I was like, "Oh, I haven't seen this movie in forever."
yeah.
And that's all I could think of that too throughout the
Okay,
film.
I'm
Yep,
glad I'm not
you aren't
alone.
alone. Mm.
Um,
But
I
I
thought
like
you,
the reasoning for it. For
yeah,
when you find out the reasoning.
yeah.
Um, yeah, I
So
did like him. I was worried, is he going to be super stoic like the villain in the first Guardians film? Is he going to be so deranged that it's unable to take him seriously? Is he gonna mirror Jonathan Majors' portrayal of Kang in the last couple entries that Kang
yeah,
has been in? I liked him. I thought he was eclectic. I thought he was menacing and very temperamental, and I yeah, every time he was on there, you didn't he just seemed unstable. He seemed very unstable, like an
hmm,
unstable genius throughout the whole film. Like if Mark Zuckerberg had powers and was a villain in the galaxy, this is kind of what I expect him to be like. So I liked
you're.
it.
Are you just saying that because the film opens with Creep?
No, I didn't connect that dot, but yes. Um, yeah, again, another excellent use of soundtrack in the
Yes.
film. But I really did like him. I liked seeing him in the past and then seeing what he's become as the villain. And you know, uh, I liked his interactions with young Rocket. Almost like there was a scene that was almost like fatherly, and then just so cold and immediately in the other direction.
Yeah.
Um, it was great, and then the face off reveal was just like, oh, that's perfect because like I was even looking in the later scenes like where are the scars from Rocket's little
Yeah.
attack a hack attack thing, and there weren't any scars, and I'm like, oh, okay, but then it made sense, and then when they pulled it off, it
It
was
was a
great
clever reveal. Um,
and
so
gory.
yeah, it was very gory. You're a fan of comic books. How familiar
Yeah.
are you with Adam Warlock?
I'm not familiar with anything in this
Okay.
movie in comics. I didn't read any Guardians comics. I haven't read anything
Okay.
with Adam Warlock, so I didn't know what to expect
Okay.
for his character.
Adam Warlock is kind of in the comics. He's very central to the Infinity Gauntlet storyline.
Hmm.
Obviously, we did not have him in the Infinity Saga. So he's very overpowerful and Superman esque. In this one, they do a good job of explaining why he's not that version of Adam Warlock.
Hmm.
Which as a comic book fan with general knowledge of the character, I appreciated. But I feel like people who are diehard Adam Warlock fans are going to be disappointed with how they treated the character. But I was like, this is exactly what I expected them to do with this character: is make him silly, make him dumbed down,
So
and
he's more stoic in the comics, not as boyish and
yeah.
everything. I mean, at least they give an excuse, like he was
Mhm.
taken from the incubation chamber early or whatever. I mean, at least there's that.
So if we see him again in the future, maybe we'll have more of that version of the character people know from the comics.
And maybe he'll
But
grow or something. Yeah.
how did you feel that thread continued from Guardians 2? Because I was okay with it. I was like, if you're going to leave that thread hanging and you need to address it in this one, I don't see any other way that you could have done that.
Yeah, and again, I have not read the comics, so I did
Mm-hmm.
not realize that his mother's people were connected to the High Evolutionary. They were another one of his projects. Is that the case in the comics?
That might just be an MCU thing. I can't confirm that.
Well, either way, I liked them working in service of the big bad instead of just being another, bad that was after them.
Yeah.
I liked that angle a lot more. Yeah, I mean, it wasn't a huge part of the movie, but it also wasn't like so unnecessary that I wish they would have cut it. Like I thought it was fun and it filled the movie. This is a very full movie. Like
It is.
there's a lot going on in this film. So
It doesn't waste its 2.5 hours, which is nice.
no, it doesn't. Yeah,
Um,
and it didn't really feel like 2.5 hours either. It moved pretty well. It
it
was
did
very
move
well.
pretty well. Um,
Yeah.
and I think that's because the flashbacks help break it up a little bit, so it keeps the story going,
Hmm.
keeps you invested, and resets you every time they happen.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so we haven't talked about Drax and Mantis at all because they had their moment to shine in the Guardians
Mhm.
holiday special, and I feel like
Sure.
they keep that going a bit here. Like I still enjoy the two of them together on screen.
Hmm.
Um,
Thought they were both competent. I liked there's a good moment where Mantis kind of tells her true feelings about how she feels about Drax and how she believes Drax is stupid and it's not his fault, and Drax does get the team in trouble at a point in the movie, and Nebula goes hard on him and just rips into him for it, and but I wouldn't excuse a lot of people that that just feel like he is a muscly um, distraction for the team, or he might bring the muscles, but he brings the team down more than being productive. And there were parts in this film where he was productive, and he
yeah.
did do a lot of great things, and so I appreciated that. I liked the angle they went with him, and yeah, I thought he was handled very well. I really did feel like they. I don't know if I told you or Seth or somebody else, but I was predicting that he was going to get a death in this film, especially after his very public comments about Disney and everything. And there was a point in the film where he was getting, shot up, and I was like,
Mhm.
"Oh shit, is this the moment?"
I
And
was
I'm kind
expe-
of glad that he didn't die.
I was expecting Nathan Fillion to sprout Mickey Mouse ears and be ho ho.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah, because they were
yeah,
nailing him pretty well.
they
Yeah.
were. Um, yeah, I kind of expect like as the movie went on, I was like, okay, he's going to be the first to go
Hmm.
of everyone here, but luckily he didn't. Luckily he gets his happy ending, such as it is. Um,
Happy-ish, because he's straight up crying at the end of the film as well. Again,
yeah,
I feel like the ending is a happy-ish ending because there's things in there that they don't wrap up so neatly that they're all smiles. There are like sad moments about the end, so
but
I like that.
we're gonna have to talk about the end here in a second. Um, the why I say it's a happy ending is you see him dance.
Sure.
Like so. Um,
Hmm.
anything? What do you want to talk about next? I feel like I've been.
I guess I so again, when this film started, I didn't know if I was gonna like it because there was a lot of, I wouldn't say experimental, but just a lot of camera work and
Mm-hmm.
cuts in the very beginning in the first couple scenes, especially when Adam Warlock showed up, and just a lot of walking around nowhere in the beginning. I was like, man, am I too close to the screen, or am I just have I just not seen a big movie in a while, or like why am I like I wasn't getting dizzy, but I just wasn't here for it. I'm like, I really hope this isn't the full movie. And then Adam Warlock shows up and they're doing cuts every other second, and I'm like, just back the camera out and let me see what's going on for a second, and that balanced out after that. So I was concerned. I was like, man, I get it. It's creative camera work, but it's a little
Mm-hmm.
much. That didn't either. I got used to it or it balanced out after
It
that because I felt the rest of the film was more watchable than the right
it
beginning.
it definitely balanced out after during the Beastie Boys scene because there's a
Well, sure.
like a 5 minute one shot of them just kicking ass, and I'm here for it. Like if I go back to see this movie, it's because of that scene. That scene
Yeah.
was phenomenal. It's the best one shot I've seen in years. The action flows so naturally. It's entertaining. Each character gets a moment to shine. Um,
Hmm. And the
and I was just
villains
like,
are mostly non-humanoids, so they could make it
they can get away
graphic
with
and
it.
everything and not worry about it. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Um,
It's a good hallway scene for sure.
yeah. I'm trying to think. The one thing that this film does that no other Marvel film has done so far from the MCU is drop the F bomb. What did you think of the MCU's first use of the F bomb?
Was it the first one? Was it
Mm-hmm.
really the first one?
Yep.
Um, I can't remember the line right now, but I remember liking it.
It was
What?
it was when they're getting in
Oh
the
yeah,
car.
the car. I mean,
Yeah.
it was good. It did crack me up because the whole push the button. I'm pushing. I feel like your fingers on the keyhole. What like, it was
Yeah.
a good scene. I did like it. I thought it was fun. It was funny. Um, felt right. It wasn't like this big like the scores leading up to it and then it cuts and F you high evolutionary. Like it wasn't that. It was
I
fun.
I was kind of hoping they would say Guardians of the fucking Galaxy or the
Yeah,
fucking
because
Guardians of the
we're the
Galaxy.
guardians of the fucking galaxy, bitch. And then open the palm. No, they didn't do that, but that would have been telegraphed. I feel like.
Yeah. Um
Um, yeah, yeah, I'm trying to think of anything else before we get to the end. Rocket was absolutely fantastic. I was Rocket had this moment that was like Harry Potter and in with with not Gandalf, Harry Potter with um
Voldemort.
his mentor no
Oh.
um
Dumbledore.
Dumbledore in the white
Oh yeah, yeah,
afterlife
yeah.
type thing. There was a Rocket has a similar scene, and I was like feeling it. I was like, all right, I'm having some feels. Like, I think they really. you connected well with the CGI raccoon, um, and I think they handled everything about Rocket and the animals very well in this.
Yeah.
And I really did like feel for them when they found out that they weren't destined for the new world. You know, like I was like, like of course not, because you got stuff hanging out of you. You know,
Yeah.
you're not the ideal candidate for a civilization. But yeah, it was. I felt it hit me in the feels.
Everything for Rocket, I was expecting the ending for Rocket's character in this to make me cry.
Yeah.
Like I kept making jokes about like I'm gonna cry for Raccoon here at the end of this movie. I
Hmm.
cried, but it wasn't for Rocket. Like I was straight up bawling in the theater at a certain scene at the end. And I'm gonna try to talk about it without crying,
Well,
because
I mean, we haven't talked about the ends yet, so you might as well
yeah.
just do it. Yeah.
So the beginning of the film, they talk about. I think it's Mantis yells at Peter for not never going back to Earth and seeing his grandfather.
Yeah. Hmm.
So I was like, okay, that's probably how they're going to end it with him, which I was
Yeah.
fine with.
John Rambo moment.
And then it happens, and he says, "Hey, Grandpa," and hugs him. And I lost my grandfather last year, and it's still a fresh wound, and the way it was done and presented just caught me off guard, and I just sat there and I cried through the whole credits.
Oh.
Um, it was it was a beautiful moment. It was not what I expected from this film, and it caught me completely off guard. And all I can say is "fuck you, James Gunn." Like, it was every it. I needed a good cry, I guess, but it was a beautiful moment, and
Hmm.
it hit me. It hit me hard in the best way possible.
Yeah. Yeah. It was a solid. I was feeling it. I'm like, this is a John Rambo moment. He's come back home. He's going to the house, and yeah, I knew they were gonna go there by the end of the film. But yeah, it was a solid scene, and I liked it a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's done well.
And the rest of the ending with like as much as that made me tear up, it brought a smile to my face watching everyone dance out of nowhere. So you get Rocket dancing with Groot, and then you get Drax dancing and Nebula and everyone else. That was a good. That was
Hmm.
a. It was the perfect ending to this film. I didn't need post
Yeah,
credit scenes. That was the perfect ending.
yeah, it was. It was a good ending. It was right after I meant to ask. Did you think that Peter Quill was gonna die in that space scene for a second there?
I thought maybe he was going to die, but I was also like, they're deforming his face a lot. If he survives this, maybe they just recast him by the end of the movie, so he just does like plastic surgery to look different, so they don't have to bring back Chris Pratt.
Yeah. I mean, it
Um,
was definitely a callback to the first, film with this a similar scene when he goes after Gamora. But
yeah,
um, I like that. I like that. They brought him back. It was a big group hug, and everybody but Gamora was hugging him, and that was a solid scene. And yeah, I thought everybody kind of saying their goodbyes and hey, I need to go do this for myself. Um, that was good. That was really good. I
yeah.
did like how Rocket was the one person in the room that was like, "What the fuck," like what we can't split up. Um, I just basically, I couldn't go back with my first family, and now my new family is all splitting up, and I did feel that for him, but I'm glad that they were like, no, you just need to lead the team now.
The one thing I wish they would have addressed with Rocket was the blip in the 5 years that he had without his family there. Like I wish they would have at
Mhm.
least mentioned that for his character, but he has so little modern day screen time that I
Mhm.
get why they couldn't. But
Plus, he had a
yeah,
lot of other trauma to deal with, so
yeah. There's only so much trauma a raccoon can handle. Um,
yeah. And we finally got the Rocket Raccoon in name. I
oh
did
yeah,
like that. I did like that.
um, yeah.
Hmm.
Very modern music with Florence and the Machine for the ending.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because I
It
feel like
was
that's
good. I
yeah.
liked his team that he had at the end. He had a
Hmm.
good team.
I don't know what the kids' powers were, but
Yeah, she had a weird eye. Um, yeah, yeah, I really didn't either.
yeah.
But I didn't
Uh,
need to know. I didn't feel
no.
like this was like as force fed as Thor and Love at the end of Love and Thunder.
Yeah.
But I just liked it. Like it was a quirky team. You had the dog. You had Sean Gunn. You had this mega Groot, and yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And then then there's a second post credit scene, which I don't know what Chris Pratt said to his grandfather. Like I missed that. What was he
Yeah,
talking
I
about?
so and I kind of feel the same way. I was sitting in the theater like I'm sure there's a post credit scene, but let me just look it up in case I don't need to be here. And they're like, you definitely, there's a good mid credit scene, but you have to sit and wait for the post credit scene. I'm like, okay. So he was talking about somebody's like mowing the lawn for somebody else that like the son could have been mowing it, and
Yeah.
his grandpa says, "Don't get me started," and he's like, "Well, I'd like to know." I don't know. That was that. I'm sure there's somebody explaining it. I'm sure it's
I,
a tag for something or
yeah. Let me take a look here. Um, let's see. Post credit scene. At the very end of the movie, Peter Quill makes a well overdue visit to his grandpa. The post credit scene catches up with Peter and Grandpa Quill after their tearful reunion with during a more mundane moment breakfast. It's a funny, cute scene without any story. They're just talking about house chores, and Peter thinks it would just be silly to. Oh, okay, so he's pretty much making him do all the chores like he was a kid. Um,
yeah. Okay.
yeah,
I mean, I was like, wait, am I missing something? What's the big pull here? But I mean, it was
yeah.
a good scene, you know. Um, yeah, I just it was a good ending. Mantis goes her way. Drax kind of stays to protect the city. Nebula's there to protect the city. Um, Gamora goes back with the Ravagers, and she appears genuinely happy with them.
Yeah,
Um, a guy, Lex Luthor from Smallville, gets a couple
Rosenbaum.
scenes in the yeah. So I was happy to see him in there. Sylvester Stallone gets some face time in the film, and
Yeah,
Diesel gets to say more than his 3 words.
I'm so glad they did not have him say the word family in that scene.
Oh gosh,
Because if they
yeah.
did, I would have just walked out of the theater.
Yeah. Now
um,
my question to you, when I thought about that scene, did he actually say those words, or was that just how they heard it? Because there isn't this big reaction to it. Like even like, Peter Quill's face barely changes. I was
I
wondering, is that just what they're hearing?
I
Like,
think that's probably just what they're
what they
hearing.
understand.
That's
Yeah.
how I read it because yeah, there's never been a moment where we know what Groot is saying
Hmm.
until then. And so I feel like that's just I'd be curious to read the screenplay to see what it says, but I'm pretty sure that would say Groot, I am Groot, but the audience hears his true words. I love you guys.
Sure. Sure. I did like that Gamora started to understand him at the end. That was a
Mm-hmm.
nice touch. But
Yeah.
yeah, I thought that I figured that because nobody reacted, and I'm like, all right, then he must have just that's how they understood it.
Yeah. That's my read on it. Like if that's
Yeah.
the last scene that you have him speak in for James Gunn or who's writing these movies, like yeah, that's how you do it. Like you have everyone know what he
Hmm.
says. Because
Hmm.
I even think
Hmm.
like having Gamora start to understand him a little bit by the end is just kind of leading into that. So
Yeah. Yeah. It was
um
good. I liked it a lot. I liked the action. Like I said, there was a lot of really good action. I love the team up in the hallway, and then the team up beating up high evolutionary.
Yeah.
I'm normally not okay with them just killing the villain in the same film because if it's a good villain that could go forward, I'd rather them go forward. But in this film, it just felt right,
Yep.
for them to
He
kill him.
he had it coming. Yeah.
Yeah, and he
Um,
was he really was a dick compared to the two villains prior to him. Like you really wanted to be like, no, you can't leave yet. You need to go take care of this dude. Like
mhm.
go hunt him down and then leave the ship.
I will say the last thing I'll say about this movie is I hate the poster. Like if you're watching this, I hate that poster that we have on the screen right now. I think it's
Yeah, I know you do.
god awful. But there's a shot in the photo montage at the very end of the credits that would have made a great poster with them all in their Guardians uniforms. I was like, why couldn't that
And
have been
maybe
the
that'll be
poster?
like a post release poster because I was thinking of you when I saw
Yeah.
that. I was like, oh,
Uh,
you'd like that.
I'm happy with the teaser poster. Like when I went to buy my tickets today, that was the poster that the theater had for the movie. I was like, good on you. I am definitely seeing it at this theater now. So
Mm.
that's still my favorite poster to hang in my light box. I still have the Flash in there right now, and I think that's going to stay there until June. So
Yeah, I did like that image of them. It felt reminiscent of the signature things that the Avengers had at the end of Endgame. Felt like a good send off for them. I enjoyed looking at all the pictures throughout the credits. There was one picture, and I don't know. It was an elderly couple that were holding cameras in the middle of the screen, and I'm sure it'll come out eventually. Like maybe it's James Gunn's grandparents or something. But I was like, who is that? Like it
I
was just an elderly couple.
he had
You
his
know who that is?
parents. He had his parents in volume 2, but their scenes got cut.
So maybe that's from that. Maybe that's
Yeah,
what that is.
that'd be
Because
my
it's just a
guess.
elderly couple with little cameras, like not phones, but actual cameras. And I'm like, oh, I don't I don't know what this is from. But yeah, that's probably what that is.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think that does it for this edition of Brilliant but Lazy. Thank you for joining us. Um, Josh, what do we have next for everyone in 2 weeks? Have we decided yet?
Um, no, we haven't.
Okay.
Let's see. 2 weeks now would be mid May. Do you have any suggestions, or did you have something in mind?
I don't right now. We'll have to talk about it. I'll have to look at the schedule and see what's coming out. Um,
Hmm?
I know you and I just
Sure, we can
podcasted
come up
about
with.
Michael Keaton's Batman, so we can't really do that again. Um,
Yeah, we'll have to come up with
yeah. Well,
something nostalgic, and maybe we have you put on a blindfold and then randomly put your finger out and touch a button on that board behind you, and then we do that because you got a
I do.
good variety of stuff back there. Um, yeah,
Yeah.
I don't
Uh,
know, maybe
yeah, we'll
we'll
figure
figure
it
out
out.
something.
You'll figure out something.
Hmm.
But until then, make sure to follow Victims of Villains on Facebook, Instagram, and subscribe to our YouTube channel if you haven't already, where you can watch episodes of Brilliant but Lazy. If you're watching us now, hi. Hit that like button. Um,
Hmm.
until next time, for Brilliant but Lazy, I'm Alan,
I'm Josh.
and we will see you next time. And remember, we are Groot.